Will Franklin, thank you for coming on the Freedom Forge. The ELC members loved your talk at our conference in Washington, D.C. So this was requested by many of us to bring you on and to hear your story. So thanks for being here.
Of course, super happy to be here. A champion of freedom, and I love what the ELC does, so happy to be here with you guys.
And how have you and your wife Liz is here? How have you guys enjoyed the weekend at the Freedom Conference?
Oh, it's been exceptional. I think both of us, after the first hour yesterday, just got us supercharged for what the weekend was going to hold. And, today we're near the end of the conference and remain super inspired and seeing courageous leaders, people who've been willing to speak out for freedom, speaking out against what I guess common convention would say is the current wisdom, and really being able to stand up for their values. That's pretty inspiring. So, yeah, we love it.
It is, and you are on the National Advisory Board for the Steamboat Institute. How long have you been working with Steamboat and coming to the conferences now?
Yeah, this is actually only my second conference, and we found the Steamboat Institute through the college debate series.
No way.
Our alma mater, the University of Texas, Austin, and there was a climate debate with Dr. Steve Koonin, and energy policy and climate policy are some of the things that are most important to me. And so when we saw that get announced, I was like, let's go check it out. And then we see that it's hosted by this thing called the Steamboat Institute. I was like, Steamboat Institute, can this possibly be related to Steamboat that we love? And we've been going to Steamboat, Colorado with our family for 15 years now. And everything came together, felt very providential. And so went to the college debate series, and then went to our first Freedom Conference last year. And post that, engaged with Jennifer and Hadley and the leadership. And it's just been a relationship that has forged from there. And I would say another thing that is really near and dear to both my wife, Lizzie, and myself is, kind of youth. We've got two boys that are both in their 20s, and kind of seeing and mentoring young individuals is important to us. And when we saw that the Steamboat Institute spends a good portion of its time mentoring young leaders, helping them feel confident speaking on conservative issues, that really spoke home to us. And so it was just like another reason that we kind of found a political home for ourselves.
Yeah, and we met you last year at the debate when you came to watch us in our the early days of the debate. We were all still getting trained on how to do that, but you really encouraged us and gave us some motivation to keep going. So you've played a big role in ELC already, and it's been amazing. So I want to talk about kind of your upbringing and hear your story. You're from Texas.
That's right.
And you grew up in a small town?
Most of the time, yes.
Okay, please tell us where you grew up and what your family life was like.
Sure. Born in Dallas, raised first half of my childhood in Longview, Texas. I'm in East Texas. And then, and probably one of the most formative times in my life, in seventh grade, the second half of seventh grade, Christmas of 84, I think it was, my parents decided to move us to Scotland.
Wow.
Now we moved over to Scotland. They really wanted us to see something else, but knew that it would be a limited time period. And so moving to a country where we needed to learn a new language wouldn't really work for us. So spent my second half of seventh grade in Scotland, and then spent that summer with my family traveling around Europe. And, so it wasn't just the brief, 1 week vacation. It was an extended period and kind of living in a different culture, and one that's close to ours, given that, Scotland is part of Great Britain and therefore the mother country, so to speak.
Yes.
It's like, we all know America is different. I would say for a seventh grader, that was really what opened my eyes to, wow, there really is something different. And with one little story, I remember, like, in the first week or so of school, and I went to the Edinburgh Academy, and we would sit at these long tables. I mean, just envision Harry Potter style. That's what it was.
Amazing. A dream come true.
Tables, and they would pass the food around. And so they're passing around, I think it was a pudding for some reason. I kind of remember.
Not haggis.
No. And fried haggis is better than boiled, just to
Not me.
opinion. But I remember the kid sitting next to me, and it was an all boys school. he held this fork up and he's like, "Do you like limeys?" And I'm thinking to myself, what in the heck is a limey? I don't even know what this means. But I'm guessing since there's a fork in my face that the right answer is no. And I was like, no? And he's like, good, because if you'd said yes, I was going to wrap this fork around your neck. And I was like, note to self, figure out what a limey is.
Oh my
I
gosh.
learned about the English and the Scots and their own history with
Wow.
one another. But yeah, that was a very formative time period. When we moved back to Texas, we moved to Kerrville, Texas,
Okay.
Hill Country, which unfortunately is well known across the nation now
Hmm.
in the events of the flooding on
Hmm.
July 4th. Um, and that was home for us for high school. I went through high school, went to the University of Texas at Austin. And yeah, I mean, I've got one brother, good parents, lost my father in 2014. My mom is still alive, and they as they grew older in life, they definitely grew much more concerned politically, but we were always a
So,
conservative household.
what does that mean when you were growing up around the dinner table? Were your parents talking about politics, or where would you say that your values came from in your childhood?
Yeah, it's a good question, not one that I have a super specific answer for you, which maybe just means they just kind of lived it, and therefore
Very few families are talking about politics. A lot of us we'd learn by watching our parents live it out. So,
yeah, I remember. I think it was a tax bill in '86 passing, and I remember my dad kind of talking about that and having concerns about what that would mean. And my dad was an independent oil and gas operator, and it was a very tough business when he was in the business. And I'm really proud of him. He was in debt. He worked to get every dollar paid off,
mm,
and then was able, when he passed away, was able to leave something for my mom such that she lives a comfortable life. And it wasn't the road to gold, but it was, he worked hard and he maintained his good name and good character. And that was something that was talked about quite frequently, that
mm.
the only thing you have is your name and character. So make sure that you hold those up. But I will say, my parents, it's not that they were apolitical by any means. And in fact, I count myself fortunate. The very first ballot that I cast was for my father. He ran for school board
Wow.
and won. And I had just turned 18. That was the first election that I was able to vote in. And I voted for my father and got to support the winning candidate.
That's amazing.
Awesome. Yeah.
What inspired your father to run, and what was that like at home while he was running for office?
Yeah, I mean, so this is probably the embarrassing part. I don't truly know what the issues were that were driving his desire to run. I do remember him kind of telling some people, I would be right of Barry Goldwater if you're looking for where I fall on the political spectrum.
Hmm.
And where I felt it, unfortunately, a couple of times in the classroom, I got a few comments from a couple of the teachers about, yeah, you can't believe your father's running for school board. And they were just kind of, I never suffered any consequences from it.
Yeah.
Had a couple of comments
Yes.
and so it's kind of an early window to politics, and that this stuff matters, and that there are different contingencies. And I would say my dad would find himself on the opposite end from teachers unions, and very
Mm.
much, if he were alive and kind of in the post COVID, and kind of seeing the battle for parents' control of schools, he would have been right in that. That would have been his kind of mind of logic. And so I've got to imagine things were going on in the ISD at that time that were bothering him, but I don't actually know what the issues were.
Okay. And you decided to go to school in Texas.
Yeah.
Um, what led to that decision? I remember you saying that at that time you didn't know if you were gonna go into oil and gas yet. But eventually during school, well, yeah, tell us that story.
Okay, no, thanks. So a couple of things there. I mean, one is I really wanted to go to Washington Lee University. I had toured it the summer before, and I heard about their honor code, and that just was just amazing to me. And I thought it was so impressive. And I loved the school, and I got into the school, and I got into the University of Texas as well. Um, and then I talked to my parents, and my dad's like, "Look, I don't know how we're going to pay for WNL. I know we can pay for a year. So if that's where you want to go, you can put your deposit in." And we put the deposit in. And subsequent to that, I was awarded a academic scholarship to University of Texas. And my dad said to me again, and he was like, we had the discussion once. I told you I will try to find a way, but I really think you need to think about this now that there's a scholarship on the line.
Hmm.
And it was great in terms of thinking about practical reality. And a lot of students graduate with a lot of debt, and
Yes, when you are 18, you have no idea.
and my dad
No
was
one.
trying to counsel me through that
Hmm.
in a very mature way. But it also gave me another opportunity. So I'd applied to Plan 2, which is undergraduate honors program at the University of Texas, and I'd been waitlisted for Plan 2. But the scholarship that I'd gotten was actually a more difficult scholarship to get. And so I called the admissions office, and I called Plan 2, and I made my case. And when they admitted me to Plan 2, I accepted the scholarship and wound up going to the University of Texas. So it was also one of those real learning opportunities to see that you've got to go out and advocate for yourself, and nobody else is going to do it. And I wasn't a victim because somebody else wasn't doing it.
Yeah.
I just needed to seize my own cause, and it worked
Yes.
out.
And it definitely worked out because I think you met someone very special in college, and I would love to hear how you met your amazing wife, Liz. Um,
Oh.
She's blushing.
You can't tell. She's in the room right now. Yeah, so I met Liz. Actually, I think we met, maybe school had just started, but we were introduced by somebody that I'd met, who was also an incoming freshman, was also in Plan 2, and we had met kind of before school in some kind of pre-program. And he lived in the dorm, she lived in the dorms, and he and I happened to drive a Mustang convertible. Liz was speaking to this common acquaintance, and she was a big Leah Iacocca fan,
Okay.
and she had read I think his autobiography, and she loved the Mustang, and she was telling dollars how much she loved Mustangs, and he's like, "Oh, I've got this guy that you ought to meet." Now, when she was thinking she was going to meet me, she was thinking I would be driving a vintage Mustang, driving a late model car. But we basically met over the car. Um, Embarrassingly, but I think given that there are political ties to this conversation, I'm going to have to go on camera and talk about the other part of the story. So we dated a little bit, and then I basically went radio silent on her. And I told her when we first met, I'm not really looking for a girlfriend. This is all very embarrassing.
This is all back to 18-year-olds not knowing.
That's right. But I was involved with the college Republicans, and I was asked to run for the co-op board, which runs the student union bookstore and that sort of stuff. And there were basically some conservatives on campus and in town that wanted to have some conservative voices around this organization that was pretty liberal. And so I ran for that. And after not talking to Liz for a number of months, she lived in the biggest dorm in the country, I think, at that time, just her dormitory. And I called up Lizzie, and I was like, "Hey, can I come over and give you some flyers to put up on my behalf?" And she was awesome. She's like, "Yeah, come on over." So I came over, talked to her, said, "Yeah, would you mind putting these up? It would be really helpful for my campaign." Sure, sure. And now, fast forwarding, probably we just celebrated our 30th anniversary this summer.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Probably 10 years ago, she was in one of our, what have we moved, how many? 18 times, I think now. In one of our moves, say 10 years ago, she came across one of the flyers. She's like, "Did I ever tell you what I did with these flyers?"
Oh,
I
no.
was like, "Whoa." And she's like, "Oh, yeah, after you left, the whole stack went into the trash can."
Wow. Smart girl.
This time is fondly well deserved. And I can't win the loss of that election. I didn't win that election.
That is funny.
Yeah, and
We praise God for filling in our.
This course the next semester,
Oh,
crazily in the same tennis class, and from there we picked things up and we dated the rest of the time through college, and we got married. She graduated in the summer of '94. I graduated December of '94, and we were married in the summer of '95.
okay. Amazing story. So you graduated college and you went into the oil and gas business. You've had an amazing career that has now led to you being an investor at Steamboat Institute and for multiple organizations with your time. So, tell us about your beginning in the oil and gas industry and what led you down that path.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, my father went through a very painful period in the oil and gas industry. And then on the other side of the family, my mom's father had been in the oil and gas industry. His father had been a wildcatter in both Oklahoma and California. So it was definitely in the blood. But after seeing it's a super volatile business. And after watching that volatility that my dad went through, I was like, yeah, I'm not going into that business. And I was interested in finance and investment banking. And I also had set this goal for myself that I really wanted to attend Harvard Business School. And I can't really tell you why, but I had kind of set that goal in early high school time period. And so as I was coming out of University of Texas, in addition to Plan 2, I was in the business honors program. And I had learned about investment banking, and I was like, oh, wow, that sounds awesome. And I'd always wanted to live in New York City. So I'm born in New York City. I want to go work for an investment bank. I had a few offers to go to New York. I also had a couple of offers in Houston, including Enron, which is its whole other story. And if listeners don't know what it is, they should look that up. Because I've avoided offers from Enron twice. And so I
Okay,
providential in terms of not winding up at Enron.
absolutely.
But then one of my classmates had a friend who worked for an oil and gas company in West Texas. And she's like, oh, I think you should talk to my friend. They're looking for somebody, and I know you want to go to Wall Street, but I think you should visit with my friend. So I was like, okay, I'll listen. So I got this call from this oil and gas company in West Texas. I went out, I interviewed with them. I got an offer to go work with them. So I had a couple of offers in New York, a couple of offers in Houston. I had this offer in Midland with an oil and gas company. And I'll tell you what made the decision was I really sat down and I thought about an application to Harvard Business School. And it was like, I'm reasonably smart, but I'm more of a hard worker.
Yeah.
And it's a coin flip getting into, a prestigious oil and gas or a prestigious business school. And there's many of them in any event. And so, but I did know that Harvard really valued a classroom and a cohort that was made up of different voices. And so, I would say it's the positive element of diversity in terms of kind of looking for those different voices,
Yeah.
as opposed to what a lot of DEI has kind of evolved to. And I was like, there's not going to be very many people applying from Midland, Texas, the heart of American oil and gas industry, to Harvard Business School. I think I'm going to go for it. And so I accepted the offer out there. I only lasted about a year and a half, and oil prices cratered. It was probably one of the steepest learning curves of my career because we didn't wind up doing what I thought I was going to do, which if we were going to buy all these companies. And so I thought I was going to be doing investment banking, but in-house. But instead, we turned into the internal budgeting group, the divestment group. And it's all the stuff that I didn't think I wanted to do, but it's all the skills that I've used my entire career. So, when you find yourself in that situation that it's not exactly what you wanted, just take heart and note that as long as you're learning, it's an important time. And that's what I took away from that. But I did wind up, by this point, Liz and I had gotten married, New York on a investment banker, and Liz was a teacher, living with maybe 3 other investment bankers. I felt like I could make that work. We didn't want to have roommates. I wasn't sure how I could work. Used to work for an investment bank there, but I will say that first company that I went to work for, the CFO of that company, later turned out to be the CEO of one of our investments at Lime Rock, the private equity firm that I spent
Mhm.
a 22-year career at, and where I retired at the end of 2024. And Tim Dunn, the CFO, who then became the CEO of this investment that we had called Crown Rock, which is, I think, the single best oil and gas investment of all private equity history. I just kind of look back on that, and Tim and I commented post closing of the sale of that company to Occidental, which happened in 2024. It was like, I don't know what it was, and but there was something providential in terms of a
Mm.
meeting very early in my career. I did not lead that deal, but it was important to me, and it was very important to our firm. And and I got to maintain a relationship with a quality individual, who, and it's just crazy how your career can come full circle in ways that you never would have expected.
Oh, yeah. And you've definitely like, having that special mentor, like, you have paid it forward in multiple organizations, the Big Brother and Sister Club, the Country Youth Ranch. You and Liz have been mentors there, and then now with ELC. What inspires you about young people and to give so much of your time?
Yeah, I mean, I am really a classic conservative in terms of really not supportive of a welfare state, but I do believe in taking care of those who can't take care of themselves. And I think we're called as private citizens to do that. And
Yeah.
I've been given much. And so, there's much that I think is expected from us. And, we identified this when we were in college. We both mentored students in East Austin, which is a lower socioeconomic part of town. And Liz and I would go over once a week and work on a reading program. And we both had students that we worked with. So very early on, we both found this kind of interest in supporting people um, who don't have, some of the benefits that we've had by having, a two-parent family,
Yeah.
parents that kind of cared about, not only cared about us, because there's lots of single parent and two-parent families where they care about their kids, but they are working all of the time and don't have the time to invest in
Yeah.
children. And we both had that. And we're like, we're going to invest in children. We think children are important. And then the other thing, the Hill Country Youth Ranch, somebody made a donation on my behalf when I graduated. Can't remember if it was from high school or college, to the Hill Country Youth Ranch. And when I got my first bonus at Parker and Parsley, this
Mm.
gas company, I was like, I want to go learn more about this. And Hill Country Ranch is based in Ingram, and they have another campus in Lakey, which is where we spend most of our time. Um, and we went out there, and here I am with my tiny little donation that I'm going to make. And I was, both of us were treated like a king and queen in terms of got a full overview and tour of the program.
Wow.
And we saw Texas's children, some of whom were pulled out of the CPS, the Child Protective Services system. Others where grandparents had taken in their grandchildren, were unable to care for them, and had found a Christian-based home that was looking to provide what they call a forever home for kids. And the problem with many of our child protective services systems across many states is these kids bounce in and out of foster care. They bounce out of these homes. They have no
Really?
stability. And a lot of what Hill Country Youth Ranch wanted to provide was a forever home where these children felt like they had a place to come
Hmm.
no matter what, and therefore had some roots and stability, because roots and stability are a big part of building self-confidence. And that message really resonated with the two of us. And so we wrote a small check then. We've written increasingly larger checks as time has gone by, and we're super excited. Most recently, we've partnered with them, and they're taking the Lakey campus. They're cutting out all government funding from that program so that they can get
Oh.
completely private. And we've helped finance a handful of beds. And, our goal is to get to over 20 beds at the Lakey campus, where we can provide for kids and provide for these families so that they know that their kids are safe, that they're being provided an education. And there is a religious component to that,
Yeah.
forced to take it, but is exposed to
Mhm.
them. And so it's a holistic provision for these children. And then after they graduate and leave, we provide a place for them to come home when they are looking for, can I come and bring my family for a vacation? There's places for that too. And that just really resonates. That is taking care of the widows and orphans that we're called to do in the Bible. And yeah, and it just kind of hit us. And so then when we looked at the ELC and trying to find an organization that we really identified.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about that. So obviously giving your time to these different organizations, and there's so much need out there, and identifying the ones that are truly making an impact. It can be difficult sometimes, and we're so grateful that you have chosen SEMA as a place that you spend your time with ELC. What was it about Steamboat and your time at the debate and the conference last year that inspired you to get involved?
Yeah, I mean, well, first and foremost, I mean, it was the Steamboat Institute. It was the classic definition of conservatism, which includes fiscal responsibility, includes a strong military. Like those were things that really resonate with me, and the idea of personal responsibility and free markets. I mean, I ran for office in 2022, and those were especially free markets and personal responsibility and private property rights were like key topics that I really love to talk about. And those were, we found when we came to our first Freedom Conference that that was really the theme, and that people were willing to kind of question one another. And so it was open. And so, of course, like the college debate series made all the sense in the world to me why the Steamboat Institute would host something like that. Because rather than being a bunch of people who definitively agree on 100% of all issues, my sense is we probably agree on 75% of the issues, and we have good discourse on the other 25%. And I think discourse is important to ultimately bringing people to your side of the argument or understanding the other side to see where there may be fallacies in your own. So I liked the open discourse. And then back to youth. I mean, as you can see, as the recurring theme, I mean, Liz and I just really care. The future is always in the next generation. And so if we want to preserve this great republic that we have, the next generation has to understand it. And when we got exposed to you, to your husband, to your classmates that are in the ELC, and we saw young professionals who are well-spoken, who care about this country, who could to some degree maybe benefit from some mentoring that Liz and I could provide, and who could also benefit from some of the financial support. And then, as you well know, I just really care about energy policy. And, Secretary Wright spoke to us yesterday and talked about the importance of human flourishing, and hydrocarbons, I think, are a super important part of that. I was just like, man, an opportunity to spend time with these individuals and make sure that, they hear my perspective. They don't have to agree with it, but I think that your generation has heard a lot of the negatives of our business and not necessarily the
Yes.
I wanted to share that with influential individuals, but I also, I mean, there's a lot of places you can write your checks,
Yeah.
fewer places that you can spend your time. And, Liz and I like to spend that time largely together. And, we both have just every time we're involved with you guys, we're like, this is the right place to invest our limited hours when we're spending time with America's youth. And so, yeah, it's just all.
Yeah. And we're all so grateful for that. So, you gave an amazing lecture at our ELC summit about energy and oil and gas, and how it is not this um, dirty industry. And I actually experienced this in college. I went to CU Boulder, one of few conservatives on campus, and one summer I had an internship at Phillips 66, and I could just see when I told my friends that on their face it just kind of dropped. Like they could not believe I would do something so horrible. But your talks and sharing this message makes such a big difference. So I wanted to ask, how much do you think it is the responsibility of the oil and gas companies to change the branding versus private citizens and the school system? Where do you think that change and that understanding should come from?
Well, ideally, I think it should come from everywhere. But I think, for better or for worse, stakeholders in the business have the most at risk. And I think we've done a very poor job of talking about
Mm.
the value that we add to quality of life. And, if you'll recall in my presentation, I showed the Super Bowl commercial that Energy Transfer put up a couple of years ago.
Yes.
And it's just such a great commercial. And for those who haven't seen it, just Google it and you'll find it. And it's so great as it kind of walks you through what happens as all the products that are made from oil and gas disappear from your life. And frankly, they couldn't truly show how bad it would really be because there would be no video to have basically shown.
Yeah.
But I think the industry is waking up to it, and I think that is important. I think there's also individuals who are getting louder, and I think that they fortunately are coming from both sides of the political aisle. But two of those voices that I would say would be Alex Epstein. He's doing a lot of work up on the Hill, helping educate legislators on the importance of hydrocarbons. There's also Bjorn Lomborg. There's a number of these people, and so I shouldn't just limit it to those two. But yeah, I mean, there's a handful of people who are out really making the case on social media, as well as in DC, and then in our capitals to help legislators and regulators understand the importance of hydrocarbons, as well as really question what has been, now I will be labeled the climate denier, and I can live with that label. But I think there's a lot more questions behind climate science
Hmm.
than I think our education system
Yeah.
would lead current generations to believe. And if you go back, and Steve Koonin, who served in the Obama administration, has been on the college debate series, has written a phenomenal book where he goes back and he goes through the UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the IPCC reports, and he's like, what gets summarized in those summaries that the press reads versus what the entire reports say are very different things. And
Yeah.
there's very much the question of mankind's impact on the climate is still up for debate. And it is not settled science
Yes.
anyway. And so, should we really be reworking our entire economy on science that is not settled to the detriment of human flourishing? And you can see it in the UK, you can see it in Germany, two economies that have really turned away from hydrocarbons. And then, particularly when the Russia Ukraine war broke out, Germany in particular found itself, they had shut down their nuclear facilities. Their normal access to natural gas was from Russia, which is really funny because if you think in Trump's first term, he spoke in front of the United Nations and told the Germans they would rue the day that they depended on Russian gas, and the delegation laughed at him,
Hmm.
real time laughed at him. And then, of
Yeah.
course, they now have some of the most expensive electricity in the world, and they have a very electricity intensive manufacturing sector that now no longer has those economies of scale.
Right.
It makes it hard to compete. So, sorry to get back to your question. I mean, I think it's incumbent upon all of us. The industry has the most at risks.
Mhm.
We've got to be out there, but I think concerned citizens got to be concerned about what their schools are teaching their classes and make sure that at least both sides of the argument are coming through this
Yes.
period of unsettled science.
Yeah, and you're right when you notice that you're not allowed to discuss something and it brings out all of the ad hominem attacks, there's usually more below the surface there. So that's definitely a lesson that we have all learned in the past 10 years.
For sure.
So, the other thing that I wanted to ask you, sorry, one second. Let me cut this time out. Oh yeah, is it all still going?
Yeah.
Okay. Actually, I'm gonna transition to out. What time are we at?
You're at 5 minutes.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Successful so far.
Yeah, this has been good. So this year you've spent some time traveling to talk with young people at ELC, with young people at Lime Rock Partners about this message about human flourishing and the oil and gas industry. And you've gotten to meet a lot of young people who are still finding their way and figuring out what they want to do. What is your advice for someone when they're in that position that you were in, where you're like, this is not what I thought it was going to be? How do you stay hopeful and kind of shift your career into what you want to be doing?
Yeah. I mean, first is really just take a deep breath and assess. I mean, you're still young and God willing, I mean, you've got a long road ahead of you. And two is to just kind of sit back and then kind of say, okay, so what am I learning in my current position? And like, how is that important to me? And then three, where is it that I want to be? And as I look for that, let's make the most of what I'm learning. And so I find I think it's human nature that when we find ourselves frustrated, a lot of times it's like, okay, I'm ready to just, drop the mic, walk out of here, and move on to the next thing. Um, and I'm all for taking risk, but I'm very much for taking calculated risk.
Mm.
You can mitigate some of the risk just by taking your time to kind of figure out what ought to be next and continuing to learn as much as you possibly can. And I'll use as an example. My oldest son, he graduated from high school in 2020. So during COVID,
Yeah.
moved up. He went to Boston College, didn't really know anybody, so was at a new campus in the Northeast with different rules than you would have found in Texas, where we're from. And he left that first semester pretty frustrated. And we kind of sat down, and he was like, "I don't know if this is the right place for me." And I was like, "Look, let's take the next semester. You can figure that out. So stop, think,
Hmm.
but in the meantime, learn as much as you can. And importantly, don't tell anybody that you have had second thoughts, because what happens when you do that is people don't want to spend time with you because everybody's looking to build relationships that are going to last.
Yeah.
If you're a short timer, they're not necessarily going to seek to invest with you.
It's so true.
And he found that Boston College was the right place for him, and he stayed. And I think he was grateful that he hadn't kind of broadcast that, I'm really thinking about leaving, because I think that would have limited some of those important first year
Yeah.
relationship building. And I think that equally applies in when somebody's in their career and trying to assess what's next. Take your time and then find those individuals. I just, now that I'm one of those people in their mid 50s, late in the career, and it's like, there are many of us who want to see the next generation succeed. And, a lot of us probably think we have advice to give. Some is good, some is bad. So, don't take it all as, take it at face value, see what resonates with you, check it against other people to make sure that you can confirm for you that it's good advice, but talk to those people. I mean, experience is important. It's not everything, because you can become too resistant to change, but
Yeah.
it is an important perspective to bring along. So I would just say, if you find yourself in that difficult position, take your time, use your network. If you have taken your time in the past, your network will be broad. You're able to speak to people, and through that presents the next opportunity. And just don't undervalue networks. I think the other side of the political spectrum has put this label of privilege, and I don't disagree that there is some level of privilege, but privilege is also created.
Hmm.
And if you invest in that and build those relationships, yes, you create privilege for yourself, but I don't know that that's truly considered privilege when you've invested in it to create it.
Right.
But darn it, if you've created it, there is no reason not to use it. And so I really encourage, networking is, in my opinion, is not going away. And I kind of chuckled today, and I actually sent my boys a text, because I'm always on them about handwritten thank you notes and how few and far between they are. And therefore, when somebody receives one, that they're very memorable. And Michelle Tapoya was speaking today. She was
Yeah.
talking about how Michael Jordan remembered her because she had written a thank you note. And I was,
So powerful.
wow, that to me was a great example. Now, maybe there's just like confirmation bias in that, but networks remain important, and treating people nicely and being thankful for the time that they spend with you, because there's one thing we are all very limited on, and it is time.
Mm.
Somebody is willing to give you that time. Be thankful and be respectful, and have something to contribute back to them. And
Yeah.
you show up also having done your homework and having thought about what the person they're meeting with might be struggling with. And then, even if you're early in your career, if you just kind of offer yourself up, I'm available if you need a resource, if there's somewhere that my network can help you, if I can help you find an employee, like whatever it may be, offer yourself up as a resource to somebody who is offering their own time and is more experienced. And that goes a long ways.
Awesome. Well, wise words, and We're super excited to continue to get to know you. I'm sure you're gonna have a lot of ELC members reaching out for mentoring and once they see this episode. Thanks so much for coming on the podcast, and I hope that you and Liz enjoy the rest of the weekend here in Beaver Creek.
No, absolutely. Thank you for hosting. Thank you for picking the podcast back up and making it something where more of us can kind of have our voices heard. So really appreciate that, Paula.
Thank you.